Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Instant Pictures Podcast. I'm your host, Max Colville, and this is episode 187 of the podcast. This week, I'm not joined by Evan. He was scared away by our featured topic this week. No, I'm just kidding. We're giving him a little bit of a break. He's recovering from a cold or an illness. So instead, we have a special guest on the show this week. I'm joined by Matthew Jackson. Hello, Matthew. How you doing?
I'm good, Max. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and where you come from and what's your background on film?
Well, I am a journalist and film critic based in Austin, Texas. I've been writing about movies since 2008 in some professional capacity or another, and I just kept building the freelance profile, and now I write for Paste Magazine, the AV Club, Pop Heist, Sci-Fi Wire, Vulture, all kinds of places like that. You can find my stuff, and I'm a member of the Austin Film Critics Association. And I also host a podcast called The Scares That Shaped Us, where we talk to every episode we pick a horror writer and we have them on as a guest, and we talk to them about a scary story, a book, a movie, a short film, a short story, whatever, that formed their imagination in some way. And we've had guests like Grady Hendrix and Stephen Graham Jones and people like that on the show, and it's a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. It's always really cool to get these backgrounds into what influenced people.
Yeah.
Certainly, I name dropped Blank Check recently, and like they have a lot of guests on when they talk about the movies, and those guests often have a lot of connection to whatever movie that they're ultimately talking about. So that's cool. Do you record? What's your schedule like on that podcast?
Well, we were bi-weekly, and then I decided for 2025 that we were going to go weekly. So we have episodes out every Wednesday at noon Central. I don't know, when is this going to go up, Max?
Today is Groundhog's Day, the second. Probably either the third or the fourth.
Okay. So I'll just say on the 5th, on Wednesday the 5th, we will have Virginia Fado, who wrote Victorian Psycho, which is a new novel that's about to come out. Also going to be a film starring Margaret Qualley and Thomasin McKenzie. She was on the show, and we talked about an episode of Amazing Stories that Martin Scorsese directed, which I had actually never seen until Virginia prompted me to see it, and it's called Mirror Mirror. You can find it online. It's an amazing little Scorsese trying to kind of do his Mario Bava thing. It's great.
Please check out Matthew's podcast or follow him wherever he's writing, and I'm sure you'll get more in depth into his background. Matthew, we've had a little like cold front here in New England, and I tell you, it just wears on you. I was exhausted today, even though like I did a lot of errands, but it was just one of those days.
Well, you took all the cold. Like, it was very cold here in Austin a couple of weeks ago into last week. We had this big cold front. We actually got a little bit of snow, not an apocalyptic level of snow, but enough that my son could kind of go out and crunch around in it for a couple of minutes. And then today it was like 80 degrees, and it's supposed to be 80 degrees the entire week. So I'll trade with you if you want. I love the cold, and it's because being in Texas, like, I only get it maybe a week out of the year. So, you know.
Oh boy, yeah. That sounds. I could go for a good 80-degree day right about now.
Yeah.
I think it was like 10 degrees this morning at like 7 a.m. So,
Oof.
yeah, it's been cold here. Instead of watching the Grammys, because I learned that they're on tonight. I guess they picked this one weekend where there's no football on, and like
Yeah.
in between, right before the Super Bowl. So it's like, oh well, we'll get our award show in and keep you entertained for a Sunday night that's no football. But no, we're going to be recording about movies. Our feature this week is about the late David Lynch, about his filmography and our experiences with his films, how we came to them, some of our favorite films of his, and our background with his works. But before we head into our feature, we're going to catch up with some news. And since the last time Evan and I recorded, the Academy Awards nominations were announced. They were held back a little bit due to the devastating LA fires, and now they were finally announced. And Matthew, I didn't think that there was necessarily like massive snubs this year. There was like maybe two or three that I was like, that's kind of surprising. Like the actress from Hard Truths was one that I was very disappointed to not actually make it into the running, but that was such a small film compared to some of the other ones that are listed. And then maybe the Challenger score, just because I'm such a fan of that.
Devastated that the Challenger score didn't get in there. Yeah.
But on a whole, it played out a lot like people expected. The biggest winner was probably the international film I'm Still Here, the Brazilian film with Fernando Torres in that not only got its placement in international film, but also nominations for actress and best picture as well.
Yeah. I don't know that I was surprised by anything. It didn't seem like a very surprising year in terms of. I mean, yes, I'm Still Here. I still have not seen it. I've heard wonderful things. It was nice to see it get recognition. It was really nice to see Nickel Boys get a Best Picture nomination. That film knocked me on my ass when I saw it. It's incredible. Um, I'm still just kind of browsing through these, and again, other than Emilia Perez, which I have to admit not having seen yet, but I'm gonna have to now because I'm gonna have to be prepared for whatever's about to happen. Everything sort of sat more or less where I expected it to. It was great to see Monica Barbaro nominated for A Complete Unknown. I thought she was great in that film. The one that I was most sad for in terms of snubs was probably Love Lies Bleeding, which and I saw the TV Glow, but in terms of what little I can do to put myself in the head of an Oscars voter, I was kind of like, maybe Love Lies Bleeding will get a couple of things, and no, which is a huge bummer because that was one of my favorite movies of the year. But otherwise, I mean, it's pretty down the middle in terms of what we expected to happen, I feel like.
Yeah, it's funny, and like I hate to harp on every episode and be like, oh well, I didn't love this year in movies, but I think like even after the fall film festivals kind of played their hands, and I didn't go to Toronto this year, it kind of felt like still waiting for that like really great movie to drop. And some people heralded The Brutalist as the masterpiece of this year, and
yeah,
some of the awards recognition that it's received would kind of place it in the upper echelon, but I don't know. It's like I really enjoyed it and do think it's among the year's best, but even that is not without it's not a perfect movie.
Brutalist was number 2 on my like year end top 10 list. I loved it. I loved so much about it, but for me, and that was the film out of the Austin Film Festival this past fall that all of my friends who were there were talking about The Brutalist being the American masterpiece of the year. I have been on, and it's funny that you said that it didn't seem like there were any masterpieces that were sort of being universally heralded that way for a while, because my wife was asking me like, what is the big movie this year? What's the one? Because last year Oppenheimer was the big movie. Like it was so clear for so long. And I was kind of doing the rundown with her of, well, these are the ones that are getting talked about, and I mentioned Anora, and she said I haven't even heard of it. And then I saw it at Fantastic Fest. It was my favorite movie of the year when I saw it at Fantastic Fest, and no matter how many other contenders I saw, it stayed my favorite. I don't know if it'll win Best Picture, but it's Best Picture in my heart. Which it doesn't mean anything because I'm the guy who was like, the best movie of 2021 is The Green Knight. The best movie of 2022 is The Banshees of Inisherin. Like I have, with the exception of Oppenheimer, which I believe I didn't even put Oppenheimer at number 1 in my list. I put The Iron Claw because I love The Iron Claw. I'm not the best prognosticator, but I love Honora so much, and I hope that we at least get a Best Actress win for Mikey Madison because she's incredible.
Yeah, there's a lot of different avenues that could possibly play out. Uh, it's, Best Actress was maybe one of those ones that was really up in the air. Not only did you have Mikey Madison, but you had, of course, Demi Moore, who is getting raised for her performance in The Substance, and people kind of want to put her, or like almost like a lifetime achievement award. For
Which
what?
is look the nominations and all the acclaim are well deserved. I love The Substance, and Demi is great in The Substance. I love everything about The Substance. I'm just sort of conditioned now for so long to look at a horror film and Oscars and go, that might not. I wish it would happen, but I don't think it's going to. It would be an amazing moment.
I mean,
That would be one of those things we would replay on the Oscars YouTube channel for decades if she actually got to win.
well, it also like broke a glass ceiling. I think this year, it's like for so often, like, um, people were holding up like Silence of the Lambs as like
Yeah,
the horror
forever.
movie that was nominated for Best Picture
That
or
was our
won.
one.
Yeah, and like since then, it's like nothing could ever get up there. There's certainly been great horror movies since Silence of the Lambs.
Oh yeah.
Just hasn't been recognized as such, at least by the Academy. And I don't know what it was about this one that tickled their fancy, and or like even this is like I guess Movies, the one who ended up with it and distributed it, and they ran the Oscar campaign for it to a terrific job, obviously.
Yeah.
Um, they also had Decision to Leave, the Park Chan Wook film from a year or two ago, and that one didn't quite have the similar juice that The Substance has.
Yeah. Well, I mean, The Substance is it's a very and I mean this complimentary parentheses complimentary internet. It is a loud film. It is a film that is not afraid to assert its quirky identity, and it also skewers Hollywood beauty standards in such a direct confrontational way that I think it's just one of those genre movies in the same way that I mean we had our last big Oscar thing for horror filmmakers was Get Out winning Best Original Screenplay.
Mm-hmm.
And it's similar to Get Out in the way it sort of takes the subject matter by the throat and makes it its own in this really wonderful way. And everyone who worked on that movie, from the director to the cast to the production designer who had to develop those amazing uh, sets, did a phenomenal job. It's just such a singular piece of work.
Mm. Um, but again, like going into that Best Actress category, there was some renewed drama or controversy about one of the nominees, Carla Sofia Gasson, who is the lead actress in Amelia Perez, which also holds the most nominations for this year's ceremony. Um, I guess she had a very racist, disparaging Twitter X account. Old posts from the 2020, 2021, 2022. And, you know, it was really a bad look for the actress to have these kind of comments and stuff out there, and could kind of, you know, make people change their mind where at one point they thought that they might be voting for this great trans narrative and this really fantastic story of a trans actress being nominated in the category and maybe winning the award. Very much has turned into something else, and it's pretty disparaging. I hate to see it go down like this. And of course, the ever Oscar pundits are like, "Oh, Netflix probably spent millions trying to get this movie in front of people's eyes, but they didn't pay like $10,000 or something to purge Sofia Garcon's social media history. Like they just overlooked that, and this could be the thing that derails it. Obviously, without going into like the politicking of it, Matthew, was this like, oh geez, when you heard this, or like how do you feel about it?
It has felt and it's been particularly true of best actress. I feel like this year it has felt especially contentious, especially when it comes to Carla Sofia Gascon and Fernanda Torres, who there's been some sort of sniping in the press about them, and again they're sort of sniping with each other. And Emilia Perez in general has been one of those films. And again, I believe I said this already. I
You
have
did
not
not see
seen.
it.
I have not seen it. I'm not gonna say anything regarding the content of the film. I'm gonna withhold judgment until I see it. What I do know is that the filmmakers have been very combative in terms of the criticisms they've received about the film, and I'm hearing from friends of mine in the film critic community who don't like the film, and the reasons they don't like the film regarding its treatment of Mexican culture, regarding its sort of its treatment of trans identity, and all these different controversies, which you can go read about. There are lots of places to read about them. Everybody, whenever that has been brought up, the filmmakers have been very like, well, they don't know. We're making something great and important, and that was the narrative. That was their Oscar narrative. Is like, we're making this really out there, fun, crazy piece of trans art starring a trans woman, and we're gonna break through that representation ceiling at the Oscars. And they did, because she got nominated, and that's wonderful that that happened. But at the same time, when you spend all your time, you spend so much time, especially in the aftermath of the Golden Globes, going after like critics of your movie, someone was bound to go looking and see if there was some reason to be even more critical of your movie.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's kind of interesting that it didn't come up sooner,
You're right.
and both in terms of like social media people finding it, and in terms of Netflix doing something about it. But now I guess we're literally, yeah, the Oscars are, I think, March 2nd, so we're like 1 month out exactly as we're recording this. It's going to be a weird month.
Well, you said even like all the actresses are kind of like fighting each other in the press. I mean, I even saw like uh, an own foul, I guess you would say, by like Mikey Madison, who had said like she refused what was it, like a intimacy coordinator on the set of Honora. And
Yeah.
like people are up in arms about that and being like, oh, how could she not have that? And Sean Baker uh, was bad for not insisting and stuff like that. And everybody is trying to take down these movies, which is awful.
Well, and it's nothing new at the Oscars. It's just more visible now. I mean, there's a whole mini series about it. If you go watch the first season of FX's Feud with Betty Davis and Joan Crawford and Anne Bancroft caught in the middle of all of that. That I forget which exact year that was, but Oscar campaigns get nasty, and sometimes we're now in a world where people go up on stage at the Oscars and slap each other. So who knows what the broadcast is going to look like? We'll see.
Yeah, well, it's good. It is going to be a long month, and I always look at the schedule for the Oscars, and I say to myself, "Wow, this is a long time to be talking about like the same like 10 or so movies."
Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot, and I'm looking forward to every relative and friend asking me who's going to win the Oscar, and me saying I don't know.
Yeah, this year
I'm
maybe more than most.
I really don't. For all I know right now, and I wouldn't honestly be too mad about this. Like, the vote for Best Picture could split and fragment enough that like Conclave becomes Best Picture, which I loved Conclave. I'm go. Let's go for it.
Yeah, right. No, that I really enjoyed it too. But I saw like the nominations. I was like, oh, the Academy loves a complete unknown. Maybe something like that could win too. So
They do love musical biopics, except like I'll tell you this, Academy, if you give awards for Bohemian Rhapsody and then you give awards for A Complete Unknown, you owe Rocketman an apology.
yeah, I really liked Rocket Man too. That movie was kind of like put on the back burner.
Yeah.
So that was some controversy, and we're not gonna leave controversy quite yet to get to Lynch. Just to do some recapping, the first big film festival of 2025 has come to a close. That was the Sundance Film Festival, and for people on the ground, they said that there was like almost like a death hymn kind of feel because this will be the last year that it's at Sundance. There's three other places that are possibilities for the festival to take place at next year, and so like people were walking around and just weren't in high spirits. Whether that had to do with the films or like people or the general feel of the last time there, or just the state of the world. Um, it was people weren't too excited about the movies. There were a few bought afterwards that I saw. I guess like Netflix bought one of the more highly acclaimed of the movies that were playing there, and I think Neon picked up Dave Franco horror movie that played in Midnights, and with his wife Alison Brie, and I think like A24 is in final talks to acquire another film that was pretty well received. But Matthew, two films that were available for people to rent on the platform, which, you know, to begin with, not a lot of films are, just the ones directly in competition. You have these other high profile films that kind of like, oh, we're going to show people at Sundance to kind of check the flavor of how this movie's going and see what our promotional budget would be. But like these movies that had some buzz, whether in this case it was one about the late singer Selena, and the other one was this movie called Twinless.
Yeah.
And both movies were taken off the platform prematurely due to rampant online piracy. People were recording scenes with their phone from their computers or TV screens, and then putting those online for people to look at and enjoy without having rented the film or, you know, spent money on it. And to stop those fears of leaking, the filmmakers took them down because both films aren't even sold yet.
Yeah.
So that's pretty awful. Matthew, do you think this like has killed online service for people to rent movies for now and forever?
I hope not. Especially in terms of festivals, as a freelance writer with not a lot of travel budget, I enjoy when I can attend a festival virtually, and there are a couple coming up. But the Chattanooga Film Festival has been kind of the big one where they pretty much put their entire program online as well as in person, and you can do both. This is one of those things that it's all about not seeing the whole picture in terms of the people who are leaking these videos, because this has been a problem for a while, and it's interesting that Sundance is the place where it's sort of boiled over again, because this happens all the time. People will go to early screenings of movies or opening night screenings of movies that are distributed already and film the screen and then put a photo or a video on social media, and then studio social media accounts will share those things, which is a de facto acknowledgement of like, hey, we don't care if you do this as long as it helps us promote our movie. So now there is this social media attitude of, we're actually helping. We're doing a good thing by screenshotting the movie and sending it out into the world, regardless of context. We're doing a good thing because we are putting more eyeballs on your movie, and that's what you want us to do as social media people. And it's tough to make like blanket statements about this, because in some cases, in terms of like lost media and stuff, like piracy is the only way we're ever going to get it right.
Mm-hmm.
But we're talking about independent films, independently financed, produced, who made their way to Sundance, and Sundance is for so many filmmakers like the portal to a dream come true. And like you said, they haven't been sold. They don't have a distributor. They don't have a way to make money on this film yet, if they ever are gonna. And I'm, the Selena documentary and the Twinless movie, which is Dylan O'Brien's new movie, they're gonna be fine in the end. Like they'll find distributors, they'll get out into the world through proper channels and things like that. But like we're talking about movies that need all of the buzz they can get outside of you spoiling scenes. It's this culture of entitlement about movies now, where we have it's got, I don't know, you, I'm sure, experienced this too in screenings where people just are completely clueless about what they're doing with their phones, and it's a nuanced topic that requires nuanced answers, but most of the time I'm just sitting here going, put your damn phone away.
No, really, like I've definitely I've been to TIFF a number of years, and like I've been to screenings where, I know that the people next to me probably either paid or had people buy them tickets that were like $45-$50 a piece, and I'm like, you're okay with just like wasting that money and like playing on your phone? Like,
Yeah, we have South by Southwest here, and there it's very clear when you go into a screening at South by Southwest who is there to see the movie and who is there to say that they were there.
yeah,
Which is also true at Sundance. I've never been to Sundance, but I know from people who have gone that's also a problem there. And I know that we talk about this now in terms of, oh, well, we're promoting the movie, we're putting eyeballs on it, we're letting people know, hey, if you see a movie and you like that movie and you want other people to see that movie, just tell us that you like the movie.
yeah.
Take a picture of the poster, use an official still that you get through Google Images, download that and put it there. You don't have to film the movie to prove that you saw a movie. Like, you can just tell me you saw a movie, I'll believe you. There are lots of ways to see movies. This is I'm rambling a little bit now, Max, so you cut me
No,
off.
no,
But
it's okay. No, no, but it's like I like to point back to a movie like Saltburn, right? That almost seems like a movie that was like made to like you record these like 5 different scenes and share them online with people so that they could be up in arms. And it's just like, I don't know, like if that movie kind of made it okay for people to do that. I there was someone else who argues like when people rent these movies, they like have to like go through a whole TOS, like terms of service, and like agree to it. But like
yeah,
we've been so conditioned that like everything we do is just like, oh, I'll just zoom through it and not care about it and say okay because it's just the price of doing business.
yeah.
And wait, you mean there was actually legal things that I had to abide by? But
Well, and there's also this online subculture now, and it was driven a lot by Avengers Endgame and that scene at the end, the big battle scene where
yeah,
Cap says Avengers Assemble. And Marvel put out a video from like an opening night screening that they had pro shot. Like it was the studio shooting this audience reaction on opening night of, and they put it out when movie theaters started to open again during the pandemic, is like, hey, remember this? Remember going to movies and cheering with your fellow moviegoers and how great it was? And I feel like because this is how the internet is now, it broke people's brains and they thought, oh, what people want on the internet is videos of people reacting to movies. Like
the
I have
Spider-Man No Way Home was another
oh
one. That those
oh
reveals were like everywhere.
I do not need to see you being excited about Spider-Man. Because I don't care how excited you are about Spider-Man. You know what's cooler than you being excited about Spider-Man? Spider-Man. Uh, I know I'm ranting now, but it's one of those things, especially if there's a point to all of this, it's that if you're a movie fan, you should be encouraging people to go and experience a movie from start to finish on their own, and you should be able to articulate why without pirating a clip of the movie on your phone and then putting it on Snapchat or whatever.
Hmm.
I don't know what the kids are putting the movie clips on now. Probably not
Probably
Snapchat. But anyway,
TikTok.
yeah,
They said like how ungoverned X is. Like those pirated clips were just up there for like 7 hours, and there's no like uh, people taking those down or what have you. So it's
yeah,
just a wild
yeah.
west out there.
It is. It really is.
But yeah, so piracy kind of hurts Sundance a little bit this year. I think there's fewer film festivals to do digital anyways. I hope that a lot of distributors don't get gun shy over this and don't want to do it. It's a shame that there's like some bad eggs that want to kind of ruin it for everybody else. But instead of spending our time talking about terrible, awful, no good things, we should spend some more time talking about the great late David Lynch and his filmography. Although it is small, if you will, with 10 films, they leave a massive imprint on the world of film. Nevertheless, is also his TV work with the legendary series Twin Peaks and all the iterations that went through over the last, I don't know, 30 some odd years. Yeah, we should start at the very beginning if we can, Matthew. And since you're the guest, you kind of explained your interest in wanting to talk about Lynch and his influences. Necessarily, I don't know how deep they go with you, but we'll certainly learn. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your history with?
So I wrote about this a little in a piece for Pop Heist, which went up a couple days after Lynch passed, or maybe the day after. But I was trying to remember what my first David Lynch movie was, and I realized it would have been 2002 because I was watching the Oscars in 2002, and he was nominated for Best Director for Mulholland Drive.
Mm-hmm.
I did not really know. I'd heard the name David Lynch. I was 15 at the time, something like that. I knew the name. I knew I'd probably heard about Blue Velvet or something like that, but I knew that he was nominated for an Oscar. And being a kid from the middle of nowhere in Texas, I was like, my only venue into learning about great movies was, well, whatever they say on the Oscars, you have to go watch. So
Right.
I went and bought Mulholland Drive on VHS. I still own the VHS, and went home and popped it in my VCR and watched it. And I wish I could replicate, in the same way that I wish I could replicate watching Twin Peaks season 3, chapter 8 for the first time. I wish I could replicate being 15 or 16 years old and sitting in my bedroom and watching on this little 28-inch TV Mulholland Drive and having no idea what was in for when that movie started. And a thing happened that it like rewired my brain for how to experience movies, because it did not make linear sense. And I thought I knew what like a non-linear, non-traditional narrative was because I had seen Pulp Fiction, right?
Right.
Like I knew like, oh, this is going in out of order. I'm smart. I can follow. I could not follow it the first time I saw it. Like my brain wasn't prepared. But I wasn't upset about it, and I didn't discard it as like this movie is a bunch of jumbled nonsense. I was just intrigued. And
Mm.
then from there I went and found Blue Velvet and Eraserhead and Twin Peaks, and I have been hooked ever since. Like what was your first Lynch experience?
So for me, it was probably also Mulholland Drive. I don't know if it was necessarily the Oscars. I think it might have been interested in a Criterion release of the title, and I had some friends who were very excited for the movie to be added to the label, and maybe that was enough of a push for me to. I won't shed myself from saying that I'm not influenced by the big C of Criterion and
Yeah.
their influence on my film loving history. But I gave it a shot, and Matthew, I gotta say, like I might have shared this in our last episode, but I didn't get it so much that I was like, is this all that is to David Lynch? I was like, oh, it just feels like this kind of, well, what some of it was a refigured TV pilot, and I just I just didn't jive with it, and it wasn't until I gave him another shot when there was a lot of hype for Twin Peaks: The Return finally happening, that I said, well, I've heard so much about Twin Peaks and how it changed TV forever that I should probably watch Twin Peaks. And if there's anybody listening, and at least for me, my wholehearted recommendation into Lynch would be to start with Twin Peaks.
Yeah, yeah,
Mulholland Drive is like kind of like on the deep end. It's like jumping in the pool instead of dipping your toes in.
yeah.
But Twin Peaks, you still have lovable characters, and certainly Kyle MacLachlan kind of like leads you, like holds your hand through a lot of Twin Peaks.
Yeah, Twin Peaks is I mean, it gets weird. It absolutely gets weird, but it has this, because it was television and because it aired on ABC in the 90s. It is so much more approachable, which, like, there are other Lynch entry points that are approachable. Like Dune is approachable. The Straight Story is approachable. Even to some extent, something like Wild at Heart is somewhat approachable in at least in the sense that you have movie stars doing movie star things in a movie like that. Mulholland Drive was, yeah, I don't know. I wasn't thinking at the time because I didn't know any better. And like, I feel even if you want an entry to like the pure darkness of Lynch, Blue Velvet feels like the one that makes more sense. But I didn't know any better. And then Twin Peaks happened, and Twin Peaks is, I think you're right, it's a great beginner place, but it's also a place, because it's longer form, and this is especially true of The Return, where you get to understand how Lynch carries an idea forward, how something weird in one episode can connect to something weird in another episode. And I don't want to say it makes sense, but I feel like it's a better distillation of how his mind works as a creator.
Yeah, and certainly, please, for the love of God, never try to watch The Return without knowing anything about David Lynch. Because even when I was watching it, I was like, oh, here's 10 minutes of a janitor sweeping a floor.
Yeah, yeah. So, what are we? I'm trying to think. I believe my next one after Mulholland Drive was Blue Velvet, and the reason I think that is, that was around the same time, the early 2000s, the American Film Institute was doing those 100 years, 100 movies specials, where they would do countdowns, and they did 100 years, 100 thrills, which was like the most thrilling. And I'm a horror guy. Like I horror is my preferred genre, and I write about horror movies a lot. And obviously I host a podcast about horror. When AFI did their little segment on Blue Velvet in their most thrilling American movies thing, they showed the scene where Kyle MacLachlan finds the severed human ear with the ants crawling on it, and I was so immediately like, I'm in. I want to see what's up with this severed ear. And I just rewatched it like 2 nights ago, and it still plays. It's funny, and it's got that wonderful, everyone talks about Blue Velvet as like it's the seedy underbelly movie, right? It shows the perfect pristine American neighborhood, and then underneath there's all this darkness. And it is that, but it's also just such a, it's a movie for the sickos, because it's literally it's about a guy and a girl who fall in love with each other because the guy basically says, do you want to help me solve a mystery? Which is the most David Lynch thing I can think of. But no, I'm curious now, like, knowing what I know about you and Twin Peaks, where did you go from there? Like, obviously Fire Walk with Me is a film that's nestled within that continuity. But like, what did you go to after that?
Yeah, so David Lynch got his start with really knowing that with like Eraserhead, and it's like this really odd black and white film, and I saved that one for a long time. I kind of knew that it had a reputation, and when I finally watched it, I was like, although this movie is like, I think it's like under 90 minutes, I was like, this is a long 90 minutes. It really kind of takes
It
you into a world.
it is definitely a long 90 minutes, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but it's very much an art film. And yet it's so funny when Lynch died. Eraserhead I saw pretty early on, and again, I have such tactile memories tied to Lynch things. The reason I know that I saw it early on is that was one that Netflix mailed me back when that was all Netflix. All Netflix was, they would mail you DVDs, and they mailed me Eraserhead, and I didn't really know what to expect. And at that point, I think I had seen two other Lynch movies, and I knew like, oh, he's the guy who makes the weird dark movies. And I didn't know what to make of Eraserhead for a long time. And then I heard Bill Hader talking about it. One of the there was a clip going around of Bill Hader talking about David Lynch, and Bill Hader's a huge cinephile who knows more about movies than I will ever know. And he
Mm.
was talking about Eraserhead, and he was talking about the baby and the weird scenes where he's meeting his beloved's family,
Mm-hmm.
and the lady in the radiator and all this stuff. And he went, "Oh, I totally get Eraserhead. It's a movie about a guy who's scared to become a father."
Right. Yeah.
And I went, "Oh shit, it is." And it's so avant-garde and so full of these almost standalone. I almost feel like you could chop up Eraserhead into just a series of like short films
Mm.
and show those scenes independent of one another, and it would still work. But that's what Eraserhead is. And if you're not prepared, like, there is something about the handmade quality of that movie and the black and whiteness of it that you're just kind of not prepared going in. It's no wonder it's one of those midnight movies. Like, and now I have to go see Eraserhead on edibles or something and see how it hits me after listening to Bill Hader.
No, I'm glad you got to the point where it's because that's generally what I think it is, of like this movie of a guy who's definitely afraid of being a father. And if you and or your spouse are expecting, I would put a pass on Eraserhead for a little bit. Um, yeah, and I think it was like, not only is like the baby kind of airy in a way, it shouldn't be as disturbing as it actually kind of is. It feels like it's simple in its design, but it works.
It does. It works, and it's freaky, and it is so unsettling. It plays like we something that comes up a lot with Lynch is dream imagery and nightmare imagery, and the way that he is able to conjure up uh things that feel like they came out of our dreams and our nightmares. And I don't have a good explanation for how he does it, but that baby in Eraserhead is absolutely like, imagine someone who is so anxious to have a kid that they have nightmares about it. What would those nightmares be? Probably something like that. There's something about that, the helplessness of it and the sadness of it, that just gets right down under your skin. And I'm not looking forward to seeing those parts as a parent now. Like, I have a kid now, and I haven't seen Eraserhead since then. But I'll tell you what I had. Speaking of black and white Lynch stuff, earlier today, before we did this, I threw on The Elephant Man, which I don't think I had seen in probably 10 years. And that is such a. It's amazing that that was his second film. It is
Yeah,
such a confident piece.
no, that was great, because like, great transition, right? Because yes, he did another black and white feature, and um he was asked on to do this movie on the Elephant Man, which I guess are based on real journals, right?
Yeah, yeah.
of the lead Elephant Man, and you know, it's just this is another movie that it doesn't have too many dreamlike states. It's like it's a pretty easy narrative to follow from beginning to end what happens here. Um, and I guess like considering it was nominated for 8 Academy Awards, I guess this would be another movie that people would probably be like, oh yeah, if I've never seen a David Lynch movie, I'll probably pick this one up. Oh, it has Anthony Hopkins, I know him, and you know, but yeah, it's a really interesting movie. Lynch does something that a lot of great directors do, and he saves like the Elephant Man reveal for a good portion through the movie. And when you finally see John Hurt as the Elephant Man, you're still taken aback. It's still unsettling.
Yeah, it's an amazing. He builds it, and first of all, what I love about it, one of many things I love about it is it very much functions as a dark period historical drama, but it opens with that weird avant-garde sequence of the little portrait of the woman, and then the woman who is has the nightmare sequence of being trampled by elephants
Mm-hmm.
and all that stuff, and that's how you enter this. And then from there it just becomes a story of this doctor who is at a carnival freak show and hears about this creature called the Elephant Man, who is apparently so hideous that no one is allowed to see him. And Lynch, like you said, plays with that. He plays with, well, what is so hideous? And it's the perfect kind of Lynchian thing, because this doctor keeps sort of following the trail of this guy, wants to know what's going on, and he's going down this sort of mystery rabbit hole towards something hideous, that's so hideous that the cops shut down the freak show, because they even make a distinction. They're like, well, a freak, to say someone is a freak is one thing. This is beyond freaks.
Yeah.
This is the most depraved thing you've ever shown anyone. And then we meet him, and he's a guy. He's a human being played by John Hurt, and it's such a great David Lynch thing to meld that sense of darkness, encroaching, and monstrosity with real humanity. And the Elephant Man is a great like calling card for that theme in his work.
Yeah, I watched it in anticipation of talking to you on this podcast. I'd never seen it. It's funny, when Criterion started releasing a lot of David Lynch's films, I just kind of like started blind buying them. I was just like, I'm gonna buy them, put them on my shelf. I have Inland Empire and Lost Highway on my shelf that I haven't seen yet either. Um, like we had discussed, maybe a movie for a rainy day.
Yeah. Inland Empire is the one Lynch movie I have not seen, and I know that it's 3 hours long and stars Laura Dern. And I'm saving it now. I'm like, eventually there will be no more David Lynch movies for me to see, but for now there's at least that one.
Yeah, but yeah, I really enjoyed Elephant Man. You know, the lead played by Anthony Hopkins, he ends up coming with his own sort of epiphany moment where he's like, well, what am I doing with the Elephant Man, and am I any better than his handler who used to show him off to people at the freak show? And like,
Yeah.
is he still using the Elephant Man as a tool to show his great accomplishments?
Yeah, it's a really, it's not the only Lynch movie based on a true story, but it is the only Lynch movie, which is interesting to say out loud. But it is such a great like case study of how Lynch, as someone who creates monsters, is exploring this story of someone who is like, how and Blue Velvet does this too, of like, how far am I willing to go, and does my willingness to go there make me a bad person, or does it just make me a curious participant in this weird mystery? And yeah, it's amazing, The Elephant Man. I didn't get to finish it today. I'm gonna go back when we're done here and watch the rest of it again. But yeah, I love that movie. And shout out to Mel Brooks who produced it and
Yeah.
gave David Lynch a break with producing it.
Yeah, I think I read that he made sure that his name wasn't like he was like anonymous because like he didn't want people to think it was a comedy.
Yes.
Um, but then of course after that he talking about the Blank Check podcast. He definitely got his blank check to do anything he wanted. At one time he was attached to direct Return of the Jedi, Star Wars, and instead he decided to take Dune off the ground. Since I've talked so much about Denis Villeneuve's Dune, I don't think we'll spend too much time here on Lynch's Dune. Obviously, it was a movie that I guess was asked to take a lot of the political background out of it and make it more of an action movie, and it's obvious that it just becomes mumble jumble in like the last half an hour. A lot of the beginning stuff is very reminiscent to what you get in the first Denis Villeneuve Dune adaptation.
Yeah.
It's a lot of the second half, but I guess the biggest thing that I like to note out of Dune nowadays is that this was his first meeting with his eventual muse and Kyle MacLachlan, and who was the star of Dune and would basically be Lynch's cipher for many of his future works.
Yes. Yeah, he plucked Kyle MacLachlan out of nowhere and brought him to play a role that now it's weird imagining an unknown because Timothée Chalamet took it for Denis movies. But yeah, Dune is fascinating. It's people have called it a beautiful mess, and it is. Like it's very clear that they were like, okay, this can't be a 3-hour movie. We got to chop some of this out. No, that can be done in voiceover. Let's just do a voiceover. We got it. We got to move. We got to move here. It was Dino De Laurentiis' movie, and he wanted an epic, but he didn't want the epic length. It has amazing design work, which is that's just the David Lynch way, and amazing melodramatic acting from so many great people. The thing I find most interesting about it is the story of the making of it, and it deeply affected Lynch because, like you said, George Lucas approached him about Return of the Jedi, and he said, well, I don't really understand this, so I'm not going to do this. And the same thing happened with Dune. I forget who came to him first with it, but they were like, have you read this book? And he said, no. And they're like, read it. And he read it, and he was like, I don't really understand this, but it was thought to be like a good career move at the time. Like, make this big blockbuster. You did The Elephant Man. People want to work with you. Make this thing. And he later referred to it as dying a death because he didn't have final cut on the picture. He was beholden to Dino De Laurentiis about so many different decisions. He didn't get to have his way. He felt incredibly compromised by having to make that film. And it is a very compromised film, but you can see the artist at work behind all of that. And we got Blue Velvet out of it. Right, which is the key.
Yeah, so I was trying to watch Blue Velvet. I also got stopped in time. I only made it through like a half an hour, I guess, like right before the part where Frank enters the picture.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's definitely a lot of trademarks of what Lynch would eventually do, and throughout his later works, you have his love of music right on full display, you know, with the performance sequences with Rossellini and the escapades with Kyle MacLachlan and Laura Dern.
Yes.
It's funny, like I was watching it and I was just like, oh, she's only really interested in him because like he knows about this heir and she's like a detective's daughter, and she's like, I need to know this scoop now. And it kind of grows from there. And
yeah,
she's like, I have a boyfriend, but you can't come pick me up.
Yeah, it's very funny because she's at the beginning of the film, she is so like, I don't want my boyfriend to think that anything's going on between us, but like, let's go have dinner before we go to this nightclub to watch this singer who may or may not be connected to this severed human ear. Like it's a love story. It's a love story for the ages. That's what Blue Velvet is. Um, yeah, I feel like there's so many kind of firsts in Blue Velvet. It's his first truly sort of Americana movie. Like Eraserhead has that sort of industrial element that Lynch loves, but then obviously The Elephant Man is a period piece set in England, and Dune is set on another planet or several other planets. Uh, but it's like his first chance. When you think about David Lynch, you think about elements of Americana, especially like 1950s Americana,
Mm-hmm.
being distorted and branched out into all of these
And,
contemporary explorations. And Blue
and it's
Velvet is the start.
and it's not wild to think that, Matthew, because like Lynch lived his life that way. He's like
Yes,
he liked his hot cup of coffee every day, and like go to the Bob Biggs boys,
Bob's Big Boy.
and,
Yes,
have his milkshake, and
it is amazing. Like, and this is a theme that I'm sure we can talk about this in relation to a lot of his work. But one of the great things about David Lynch was, like, it was not an act. He was absolutely sincere in everything that he was pursuing, and he talked all the time about his upbringing, and he talked about Bob's Big Boy, and he loved going to get chocolate shakes at Bob's Big Boy. He loved coffee and pie. Like, that wasn't just an affectation in Twin Peaks. He just loved coffee and pie, and so he wrote about a character who loved coffee and pie. He was so sincere in his love of things like that. And I remember him talking once about, like, they don't make cars like they used to. Cars in the 50s were beautiful, so he made a movie where he could put a bunch of like cars from the 50s. And then it becomes this story about sadomasochism and drug use and sexual slavery, and to the point that, like, I read last night that Isabella Rossellini was dropped by her agency for being in this movie because of how dark it got, which
yeah.
is amazing to think about now, because we look at Blue Velvet and go, "Oh yeah, it's one of the greatest American movies. It's one of the best movies of the 80s, one of the best movies of the 20th century. It's incredible." And back then people were just like, "This is filthy.
Yeah.
What are we doing?"
Well, it's just like I guess they weren't ready for it, to use the phrase from Back to the Future. Like,
Nope.
maybe you don't understand, but your kids will love it.
But your kids will love it. I was born the year that Blue Velvet came out, so I am those kids, and I do love it.
um, yeah. So yeah, I'm looking forward to finishing Blue Velvet. It's been a while since I've watched the film, and obviously we have a lot of David Lynch still talk about, and we could obviously do an hour and a half on everything.
Yeah,
But to move along, Twin Peaks, and by extension his movie Fire Walk with Me.
which is my favorite Lynch film, Firewalk with Me. Yeah.
Wow. Bleak, Matthew.
I know, but the more I go back to that movie, the more I see, first of all, the brightness and the heart in it, and second of all, just the the intensity of it. It is such a David Lynch film. It I don't know if it's the most David Lynch film, but it's so, I just love it so much, and I have, believe it or not, found a lot of like hope and optimism and brightness in it, especially in the that final sequence over the years. So yeah, I know I'm the horror guy, right? So yeah, Firewalk with Me is my favorite David Lynch film.
um, yeah, and absolutely do not watch it without having watched Twin Peaks unless you want
No,
all
yeah,
the drama.
gotta watch it. Gotta watch the show first.
But yeah, the show was this great mystery, who killed Laura Palmer, and you get introduced to this large ensemble of characters in this small town, from a detective who is looking into her crime, and Kyle MacLachlan. You have people who work at the local diner, a bigwig and his daughter who kind of looks into some of these crimes. I think there's a casino involved. The grieving family, ex-boyfriends the list goes on. Meals on Wheels, even.
Meals on Wheels, all of it.
Um, but yeah, at the beginning it seems like something easy that you could take down. Oh, it's a murder mystery. People nowadays, these murder mysteries are almost dime a dozen now in 2025. But this idea of this huge cast and these ideas really originated here with Twin Peaks, and certainly everybody probably has characters that they love more than others, and or storylines they want to follow more than others. But it certainly was a big swing and a very memorable time in television.
It still holds up. It's still amazing. It's so and Twin Peaks and David Lynch in general, but especially Twin Peaks, like the more you know about pop culture, especially the pop culture of the 80s, like Maggie Mae Fish did this amazing 2-part video essay about Twin Peaks, and she was essentially deconstructing like it's a murder mystery, but it's also a primetime soap opera, and it was sort of sending up the primetime soap operas of the 80s like Dynasty and Dallas and things like
Mm-hmm.
that. And the more you learn about American pop culture, the more Twin Peaks makes sense. And even then it doesn't fully make sense, but it is such an amazing, like, you talked about it being a big swing. It feels like David Lynch had been thinking for 20 years about all of these different storytelling devices and ideas and things to play with. And credit to Mark Frost, who co-created the
Right.
show with Lynch and was a key driving force of it too. And then they threw it all into this wild show with a mystery that they never intended to solve. By the way, the network made them do that because the whole idea was it was never about who killed Laura Palmer. It was about what was going on with this town. And like, there's, yeah, if you still haven't seen it, y'all, there's a reason that people like Max and I have not shut up about Twin Peaks for 34 years or something like that now. It's because it's amazing.
Yeah, it's fantastic, and if when you eventually get to the return, and if you're expecting like sunny return to all these characters that you love, hold on to your seat because it takes a long time to get to where you think you might be going, but even then, get ready for some misdirection.
Yeah, if you thought that the Sopranos finale was all about playing subverting your expectations, yeah, wait till you get a load of Twin Peaks: The Return.
So I guess like then I learned I learned about the Straight Story. You know, I knew it was this movie that was eventually optioned by Disney, and I ended up watching it more recently on the Disney Plus Hulu kind of joint app. And it's such a weird thing to be able to do that for a Lynch movie. And I'm
The
sure,
David Lynch Disney movie, yeah.
yes. I guess he originally made it for like Studio Canal, and they people at Disney were like, "Oh, this is a great feel good story. Yeah, we'll license it and distribute it."
Yeah.
But basically, it's based on the true story of Alvin Straight, who was a man who was a veteran who couldn't have his license anymore, and he was nervous about trusting people driving him somewhere on a bus. And he learns that his estranged brother, had a stroke, and he needs to make up with his brother and see his brother, lest something happens to him. And so ultimately, he decides that he's going to use a ride-on lawnmower to travel hundreds of miles to see his brother, because you don't need a license for a lawnmower. And it's really about all the people he meets on his journey. The great Sissy Spacek kind of plays like a supporting role. She's not in it too much, but like if you need a familiar face, there's certainly one to help drive you into the action. No, I like a good road movie, and Matthew, this certainly is a good road movie.
It's a great road movie, and it's also the single most accessible David Lynch film. Like, in term, The Elephant Man is up there too, but if you want a David Lynch movie you can show your mom, uh The Straight Story. And that is not I don't mean that in a disparaging way, but like we tend to we tend to think of Lynch only as the weird guy, as like he couldn't make a movie without being weird, and there are certainly impressionistic, abstract moments in the film, moments that are meant to evoke a feeling more than convey like plot information. But it is a very simple, it's just like Max said, he wants to go see his brother, he can't drive, he doesn't have anyone to drive for him, he gets on his riding lawnmower and he rides for like 6 weeks from Iowa to uh Wisconsin or something like that. I
Hmm.
think those are the states, if I remember correctly. But yeah, Richard Farnsworth plays Alvin Straight, and was one of Richard Farnsworth's final movies. He was the oldest nominee for Best Actor at the Oscars at the time for this movie, and it's well deserved. He has to do so much with just playing this very simple guy with simple, understandable desires. But at the same time, it has that Lynch quality of it is about someone who is searching for something and who feels this very deliberate need to do it their way. It also, just as an aside, it features my favorite transition shot in any Lynch movie, which is there's a shot of Alvin Straight's house and it's raining outside and you see the rain falling on his house, and then Lynch starts to fade in this shot of grass, but the camera is panning over the grass, so it very briefly looks like it's raining grass over the front of this house. It's beautiful. I forget who shot it. Who shot it? Freddie Francis. Freddie Francis shot it, and yeah, it's a beautiful movie in on every level. I love it.
Yeah, I was definitely moved by it. It's like, and it's one of those movies that like you'll probably like his adventures with the different people, like maybe more than others, because it really like it depends like who he's talking to, and like there's one sequence where he meets this young woman and she's like, oh, I'm running away from home, and like you can maybe piece together in your mind why she might be running away from home.
Yeah.
But you have Alvin Straight offering his kind of like vague but meaningful advice to her, and
Yes.
it obviously means a lot to her.
Yes. And it's a good movie to watch now. Now that Lynch is gone, because it does have that quality of being a film about a character who is sort of taking stock of what matters in his life.
Mm-hmm.
And you can feel, we just talked about with Blue Velvet and Twin Peaks, there are certain simple truths that David Lynch clearly believed in about life and family and love and things like that, and they're all in The Straight Story.
Which kind of brings us back to the only other Lynch movie that I have seen, which is Mulholland Drive. I have not seen Wild at Heart, Inland Empire, or um,
Lost Highway.
Lost Highway. Yes.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean,
do,
they're good. Like I haven't seen Inland Empire. I don't have much to say about the one thing I will say about Wild at Heart is Alexandra Philippe did a documentary a couple years ago called Lynch slash Oz, that is a bunch of filmmakers getting together and sort of talking about the Wizard of Oz and its impact on Lynch's work. And Wild at Heart is very much Wizard of Oz coded. So like watch Wild at Heart and then watch Lynch Oz. Lynch Oz is streaming on the Criterion channel. It also has amazing insight. Karin Kusama does a whole video essay in the middle of it about Mulholland Drive. That's
hmm.
amazing.
Yeah, well, one of the things I found, Matthew, while I was looking back at a lot of people's memories of David Lynch and stuff, is old reviews from Siskel and Ebert and how much they
Oh yeah.
disliked they disliked David Lynch movies.
Yeah,
And
I keep meaning. Someone made a compilation of all of them, and I keep
yeah,
meaning to go back and watch it, but I don't want to hear. I'm a film critic. I idolize Roger. I don't want to. I don't want to hear Roger being wrong. You know.
yeah, I think I saw one video where they were talking to him about like Wild at Heart or something. And they were like, "Oh, we both hated it." He's like, "Thanks, guys."
I will say for in Roger's defense, Mulholland Drive was the movie that like clicked for him with Lynch. He was
Oh,
a
all right.
fan. He was a
Okay.
fan of Mulholland Drive, and he even was like, "I'm sorry about what I said about your other movies because this one's amazing."
Oh, all right. Yeah. So, I want to spend like maybe another 5 minutes talking about Mulholland Drive, and then we'll move on to
Yeah, yeah,
what you've been watching section, because it is such a groundbreaking movie. The movie has frequently appeared on the best movies of all times list. I don't know. I'm sure it was on that Sight and Sound list. I'm not sure uh, where it placed now, or
yeah. I don't actually. I'm trying to find it, and I can't find it. So we may have to just sort of.
imagine, right? it it's and it's like it was its foundation was that like people were going to go shoot a pilot for this TV series Mulholland Drive, of course,
Yeah,
from the director of Twin Peaks, and he was making a new TV show. People would want to be on top of that and into it. And if I remember the lore correctly, did the studio pass on Mulholland Drive, and then he got funding to make it into a movie?
yeah. It was something to the effect of, like he sold the pilot on the strength of it's about it starts the same way, right? It's a woman who is in a limousine, and someone reveals that they're trying to kill her, but a car accident happens and she hits her head, and then she has no memory of who she is, but she has a purse with $125,000 in it and a blue key. And Lynch, apparently, that mystery was enough to sell. I think it was ABC too. Like, yep, we want that. David Lynch doing another mystery. Let's go. And then, yeah, for whatever reason, what he shot didn't really click, and he sort of tacked an ending onto it, which feels like a weird thing to say, but yeah, it was planned to be a longer story, and instead it became this film. Which, by the way, yeah, I checked. It's number 8 in the most
Okay.
recent Sight and Sound poll.
Yeah, there you go. A top 10 all
Yeah,
time film by the critics.
it's it's so good. I don't have a lot of insight left to say about Mulholland Drive. It's just it might be his most visually beautiful film. Uh, it's got his most famous scare in it.
Mm-hmm.
The person behind the diner
Yeah.
in that early scene. It's got amazing music. It's a love letter to the mysteries of Los Angeles, and it's Lynch didn't live very far from Mulholland Drive, where the opening of the movie takes place. It's just incredible. It's a masterpiece.
And I'll give it this too, Matthew, is that even though I haven't seen the movie, I know the twist, because there is a twist here. That it doesn't matter. It doesn't ultimately matter how the movie kind of shows its hand later.
Wait, are we talking about Lost Highway or Mulholland Drive? I thought you said you saw Mulholland Drive.
No, I have Mulholland
Okay.
Drive.
Oh, okay. We're to, I'm not sure what we're talking about. It doesn't matter when it shows its hand later. I'm not sure what we're talking about.
Doesn't like no Naomi Watts like kind of like it kind of like changes perspective, like she.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, I don't really see that as a twist because
Okay.
it's with David Lynch. It's just so hard to pin down like what's a plot twist if the plot wasn't you know wasn't completely linear to
Yeah,
begin with.
because
But
for me it was like the two women kind of switched.
it yeah, it is Lost Highway does a similar thing where
Mm,
you are looking at two different iterations of the same person, maybe, or
okay.
one is imagining this is one is imagining a version of their life that's better, and that's what you're seeing. There's a lot of like, is it wish fulfillment, is it dream fulfillment?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there is that, and I don't know that it's that it doesn't matter. This is a thing. And look, this is probably a good place to wrap up talking about Lynch, because it all comes back to this. He didn't explain his movies.
You're right.
There are countless videos and articles and everything that you can go read that are like Mulholland Drive explained. Twin Peaks explained, Lost Highway explained. And people have come up with amazing interpretations of what all this stuff means over the years. Lynch would not tell you. And at one point, I think promoting Mulholland Drive, he even said, like, I wish I could tell you, but I can't. The film is its own explanation. And in that way, it's kind of and it sounds like a cop out, right? It sounds like one of those things where you're like, I just threw gibberish on the screen and then said, you figure it out. But his characters are always these searchers who are on this almost unconscious mission, whether they realize it or not. And it goes back to Kyle MacLachlan in Blue Velvet. It's Dale Cooper in Twin Peaks. It's Laura Palmer in Twin Peaks. It's the characters in Lost Highway. It's even the Straight Story has it, where they're all seeking something. And on some level, it's not that the answers don't matter, but it's that you have an emotional response to that seeking, and you relate to that in some way, or at least I relate to it very intensely, and that's why I'm a Lynch fan, I think.
That's a great way to put it. And yeah, I did see a lot of stuff about nobody wants to be the one to tell you what these movies are about. Please make your own ideas of what they mean to you.
Absolutely, yes. If someone has to take about how Mulholland Drive is all about David Lynch's great aunt and how weird she was or something, by all means throw it my way. I'll read it. I don't care. But yeah, I like the abstractness of it all.
All right. Yeah. So that was David Lynch, the great late director. A lot of his works can be found physically on Criterion. You can find the Criterion Channel themselves have some movies of his up right now. Certainly, like I saw The Straight Story on the Disney Plus portal with Hulu. So there's a bunch of different places you could take in his stuff. We kind of tried to identify some good places where you could get started, whether that was Twin Peaks, The Elephant Man, or The Straight Story.
Twin Peaks, and I will say, we were talking about streaming. I believe that the first 2 seasons of Twin Peaks are free on Pluto TV right now. So if you haven't seen it, you can go find it there.
Awesome, yeah. I think, and it's also on is it CBS's portal? Like Showtime?
I think they're on Paramount Plus. Yeah. They might also be on Showtime, but that's all one umbrella now. I think you can find them. But as Max said, like don't watch ahead. Just watch Twin Peaks season 1, Twin Peaks season 2, Firewalk with Me, and then Twin Peaks season 3. Otherwise, you're going to be even more lost. So yeah.
Yeah, it was funny, Matthew. I heard someone say that they had watched Firewalk with Me without having ever witnessed the TV show, and it's just hard to imagine.
Ooh, yeah, that'd be weird.
Yeah, but we're gonna go into what we've been watching. But before we do that, we want to do some station identification to tell you where you can find us. The podcast can be found mostly these days at Blue Sky. You can email us at itsthepictures@gmail.com. You can listen to us on Apple Music, Spotify, YouTube. Please give us reviews if you like the show. It will help us reach a larger audience and let people know about this great show you like. Matthew, where can people find you?
I'm mostly on Blue Sky right now. I'm at awalrusdarkly.bsky.social. Don't ask me what the handle means. It doesn't mean anything. It's a silly thing I came up with 20 years ago, and it's too late to change it. And my podcast is thescaresthatshapedus.com. You can see an archive of the episodes we've done. If you see anything you like, click play, listen to it, tell your friends.
Yeah, you reminded me. Yes, you can also find me on Blue Sky. You can search my name, Max Colville, or at maxcolville.com. Our regular co-host Evan Crean is also on Blue Sky at realrecon.bsky.social. That's real spelt like film reel. Then I have the It's the Pictures newsletter. Currently still on Substack. I fight every day about whether I'm staying or not, but it's there right now. more recently, I talked about the Oscar nominations. I have an upcoming in review article to do. Some home video releases have come out recently that I was kind of interested in, whether or not it was the release of Crossing Delaney from Criterion, or I think it was Universal was kind enough to send me a review copy of Wicked. So I should be talking about some of those on the newsletter shortly. Matthew, normally on It's a Pictures at the end here, we talk about what we've been watching, whether it was a TV show, an old movie, or a recent release. We kind of give this opportunity to just talk about anything that we like. I know in the past, some of the co-hosts, whether or not it was our old co-host John Gilpatrick, would talk about his fond love of reality TV and The Bachelor and Bachelorette. And our current co-host Evan Crean has been talking about some of his TV show loves recently, including the new season of Severance that is fantastic. I've been watching along with that. What have you been watching, Matthew?
Well, TV wise, I've been watching The Pit, the new medical drama on Max starring Noah Wiley. It is. I didn't know this going in, but the gimmick of The Pit is that it's like 24. Every episode is one hour of a shift in an emergency room in Pittsburgh.
Oh, that's cool.
And it's got an amazing ensemble cast. It's really exciting and fun. So if you haven't seen it, it's on Max. Go check out The Pit. On the film side, Thursday night, I went and saw an opening night screening of Companion, Drew Hancock's new movie starring Sophie Thatcher as a woman who gets caught up in a very odd situation related to her boyfriend, played by Jack Quaid, and a lakeside getaway that turns violent and strange very quickly. I'm dancing around plot details because people have been very specific about certain spoilers of this movie and not wanting to know about them. What I will say is it is a ton of fun. It's thrilling and exciting and unfolds in sort of that what the hell is going on way that like Barbarian did, and it's the same people who made Barbarian, so it's being tied to that a lot. It is much more horror weenie friendly, I think, than Barbarian is. Barbarian goes some really dark places. Companion is more fun, and if you saw like a movie like It's What's Inside that came out late last year, it's kind of that vibe. It's and Harvey Guillen is in it in a supporting role, and Harvey has one of the single funniest line reads of the year. And I won't spoil the moment, but he made me laugh so hard in the theater. So yeah, I love Companion. It's in theaters right now. Max, what have you been watching?
Well, before I go on to what the movie I've been watching, I was going to tell you, Matthew, I played a game last night with my wife and her friend who were over, and I showed them the teaser trailer for Companion and saw if they could figure out what was going on in the movie. And then after that, I showed them the more recent trailer, which pretty much spoils the whole thing.
Yeah, it's true. It does, yeah.
So they were like... But it was surprising. They actually told me that they were more interested having seen the actual theatrical trailer than the teaser trailer. So, but if you want to avoid spoilers, please don't bother watching the trailers for that movie. Just go in cold.
Yeah.
So I haven't been watching too much. I don't know whether or not it's been watching Severance or kind of playing video games. I'm catching up on like this long RPG Metaphor Refantasio that came out last year. That's like 70 hours. But I haven't been watching too many movies. I did stop everything I was doing to watch 50 Years of Music SNL, which is a Questlove kind of made documentary on the music history of SNL. And, you know, I probably wouldn't have cared about this if I didn't know Questlove was involved, but once I heard that, I was like, all right, yeah, I liked what he did with Summer of Soul. Let's see what he does here with this music documentary. And Matthew, let me tell you, if you don't see anything else of this movie but like the first 10 minutes, make it that, because that's amazing. It's like cut amazingly, and like he like merges songs together. it is incredible what he does with editing and mixing in that first 10 minutes, and it kind of sets the tone for the whole thing. I wouldn't say the rest of it is as like exceptional as that. It kind of goes through the history of SNL music as you would expect. It's kind of traditional from that point. They talk about the Lonely Island and their history. They talk about some famous music spots on the show and some musical guests like Sinead O'Connor and I guess Elvis Costello. These like really memorable SNL music moments, and no, I enjoyed the whole thing. I learned a bunch that I didn't know about the history of SNL, and certainly hearing some of the acts that were on the show, I was like, oh, I need to like look up these performances and see if I can see the whole thing.
Did they show the time that Paul Simon sang "Still Crazy" after all these years in a turkey suit?
Yes, they did.
Yeah, that's an amazing like first season of SNL moment. Did they talk about when the punk band Fear was on?
Yep,
And
that's on there too. Yeah.
If y'all don't know about Fear, I need to watch this because I'm like an SNL history nerd at this point. If y'all don't know about Fear, the band Fear going on SNL in 1981, go look that up because it's insane.
Yeah, the documentary is a lot of fun. I guess since like it was airing on television, even though it was for a 3-hour slot, I'd say it's probably more like a 2.5-hour movie, given like the commercial times and all that. So, yeah, hopefully people who missed it get a chance to check it out.
I would imagine it's on Peacock, which I need to go. I'm definitely gonna go watch it because I've been looking forward to that. I'm glad to hear it's good.
Oh yeah,
I didn't know Questlove was so directly involved in making it. That makes me more excited to see it.
Yeah, and like I think like I was seeing him do a round of interviews before it's released the other night, and like I was like, oh, this is really neat hearing him involved, because I think he had another music documentary at Sundance too. Like, so he's been busy.
He's always busy. Yes.
All right. So that wraps up another episode of the It's the Pictures podcast. Matthew, I just want to say thank you for taking the time to join me on this episode, and I enjoyed this talk about the filmography of David Lynch with you.
Oh man, it was so fun. Thanks for having me.
And for everybody else, we'll be back in 2 weeks' time. Evan will be back on board, and hopefully we'll have another great topic for you at that time. All right, and we'll talk to you again soon. Bye.